Hey everyone, and welcome to Geeksvana Live. Thank you very much for joining us. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the shiny new, and it's very shiny and very new, CAA recommendations to UK government for what would be a pretty major overhaul of the UK drone regulation system, certainly in the open category. There are some painful pills to swallow in the 33-page document, but there's also actually a good bit of positive steps in there as well, and a real sense that in the forming of this document, the CAA have tried to take into account the views of those who responded to the consultation and actually drone flyers in general in the UK. It also seeks to answer some questions that have been hanging over UK drones for quite a while, and should these recommendations be accepted by government, we will at the very least have a solid base to work from. We'll finally know where we stand on so many things. Interestingly, many of the recommendations are made against the opinions of the majority of those who responded to the consultation itself. I think that's always something which I think is going to be a real interesting one. Today, we're going to be focusing on the highlights. So this isn't intended to be a long show. Phew, says the audience on a summer's evening. Future videos and live shows will deep dive into the specific topics and the document as a whole. Instead, today, I'm going to bring you the key changes and explain how they will impact your drone flight in the UK. That's really how we're going to try and do that. Firstly, it's important to explain that this impacts the UK open category. The changes will impact all drone flight types in the category, including sub 250 gram drones, hobby and commercial drone flying, of course. Now, we're going to bring our main man Graham in. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm very well. Yes. Yeah. Excellent. And
I almost pressed your button. I think they may have got the good of the good evening, not quite on air then, but I almost pressed the audio button.
Good evening.
It's been a while, people. It's been a while. So yeah,
we're a bit rusty.
GT Skinner is saying he's missed those shirts.
Excellent.
Yes, indeed.
Bit of all a Keeley. It's lovely. I remember going to a council meeting and one of the councillors turning around when somebody said something about this isn't what we voted for in the consultation, and he said, "Yeah, it's a consultation, not a democracy." That's what we have to remember.
That's it. Yeah, indeed, and it is an interesting viewpoint, and you know, we always try to get people to engage with these consultations for good reason, and there are some things they've listened to, but of course it's the things that they, you know, to a certain extent, when the CAA put a consultation out, they've already got a book of answers from their boss, the government, essentially. So there's only so much they can play with, isn't there, really, from that point of view. So Lee is saying, well, if I wasn't awake, I am now with that shirt. It's good to see a strong return to form, frankly. So let's get into it and take a look at what this document and release from the CAA is and when things might start to happen. This is a response to the 2023 review of UK UAS regulations consultation. Doesn't it feel like a long time ago since that document was out? It feels like so much has changed.
December 23.
Yeah, it feels like such a long time, doesn't it? Since that was the big news, really.
Yeah, coming on for 18 months, isn't it?
Yeah, and of course we've had change of government. We've had, you know, and of course the SORA, UK SORA that's come in, and there's been a lot going on, including perhaps amending accounts documents and that kind of thing. Oops. So the CAA have read and analysed the responses from that and are now providing their recommendations to DFT on key changes. In terms of when, well, the document actually discusses changes being made to legislation as soon as 2026 and others spread across the following couple of years. So there are also things like remote ID, which of course is already in UK law. That means some of this will have to be changed at legislation fairly soon to make 2026 dates for some of the amendments and changes they want to make. So perhaps we'll see this happen fairly quickly, but you know, that is not a Geeksvana guarantee by any stretch of the imagination.
Don't guarantee anything on their behalf.
Yes. Oh, well, look how long it's taken to get to this point. So the CAA have laid out their key changes in sets of recommendations. I'm just pressing an important button there, excuse me. Now, a lot of these are backed up by longer explanations in the 33-page report and other associated documents. And as I said, we will go through those in the future. But today, we're going to stick to the main facts to help this show stay as short and as info-laden as possible, basically. So the first set of recommendations focuses on, as the CAA describes it, simplifying regulations for drone users. They propose to amend regulations to allow C1 stroke UK1 class marked UAS to overfly uninvolved people, harmonizing operational requirements in the A1 subcategory for different types of UAS. Now, this is obviously huge and means drones like the DJI Air 3S will be able to overfly uninvolved people. We won't have that whole no intentional. It'll be my little heart will twang that we won't be saying no intentional overflight anymore in our training videos. But
Yeah.
there we go.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the most significant deregulations of drones, I think, that we've seen, certainly obviously since 2020. And there are obviously some important subpoints to it as well. The UK will have their own UK mark, UK1 mark and UK2, etc. This isn't necessarily as bad as you think. It will differentiate and allow the UK to maintain their own quality assessment and make changes to suit the UK as well, of course. The CAA states that it is our view that it is appropriate to provide manufacturers flexibility in how they approach conformity assessment in the period before conformity assessment bodies are fully established in the UK. We propose to allow self-declaration through internal production control for products with a type examination certificate from an EU-approved conformity assessment body for C1, C2 and C3 classed mark until the end of December 2027. From January 28, we are proposing to require manufacturers to obtain a type examination certificate from whatever the UK body will be there, basically, for UK 1, 2 and 3 UAS. So this does mean, of course, that C labels will be accepted for 2 years.
Yep.
We already have lots of drones on the market at the moment. So this, again, is positive news and understandable news as well. It does allow for the switch to UK labels to be at the start of 2028. This means, as I say, the C label drones will be usable from January 2026 as the label intends. Of course, there's nothing stopping you using those drones in the UK at the moment, of course. So this to me seems like an interesting one. Later in this list, we're going to talk about the fact that they want to essentially rename A1, A2, A3 as fly over, fly near, and fly far from people. And of course, you can't have a section of the A1 being called fly over people when lots of the drones in that subcategory can't fly over people, I suppose. So it makes sense from that point of view.
And I think legally they must have realised that avoiding unintentional overflight legally is just it's a mess. It doesn't mean
enforcement
anything.
wise it's so difficult, isn't it? I mean, to me, the only way you could ever argue that is if you took off in a crowded park or something, and then there's no way you could really justify that you're going to fly without flying over people. So there's very limited situations.
It really is limited,
and then all you need is an Article 16, of course, and you can use the bubble and fly over people. So now the UK one label, and somebody in the chat has actually just raised that, do we think the DJI will do a yes, I do, because in fact when we were using the UK CA label to be the double up for the CE before they dropped that, they were putting that on all sorts of electronic devices. Lots of companies got ready for it, didn't they, basically? And
I'm pretty sure it appeared on some drones.
It did. It appeared on some DJI. So I don't think that'll be a problem. Printing an extra logo for we're not a huge market, but we're significant enough for them to do that, certainly, particularly as they're giving them the time to be able to do this as it rolls on. But to me, it feels like a bit of a deregulation from the point of view that we are now saying a drone as significant as an Air 3S, which is on my table over here, which isn't, a small drone, is it really? When you look at, let's a mini drone here, and this a C1 drone, obviously one is unfurled, the other one isn't. But it's a significant jump in size to say, okay, this is now okay to be flown over people, isn't it? So
it is, but even more, you've got the Mavic 3 Enterprise, for which they're working on a lightweight battery to allow it to come under the 900 grams and get a C1 marking.
Now, and again, anyone that's watching that has the M3E or has an opportunity to acquire one for their business and they're umming and ahhing, do it, frankly, because although they're becoming end of life, it is something which is going to be very useful, particularly now, should all of this actually happen. So, do you think, Amok Time is asking, do you think DJI will do just one label that has both C1 and UK1 on it? Probably not, in actual fact. I think once the 2028 deadline comes and goes, I think it will actually be dealt with very separately. I can understand it. The justification is really that obviously if we say from here on in we're going to accept anything that goes through the EU process and is C1 labelled, that is basically following the regulations of another sovereign state, essentially, isn't it? Really, when we're opening ourselves up to problems, basically, which obviously
we've talked about regulatory divergence, haven't we?
Yes, exactly. So it causes all sorts of problems. And as I say, if nothing else, it's one of the things that I think at least it draws a line under it, and we can kind of move on and enjoy these drones the way that they were intended to as well.
It is entirely possible that, particularly in the early days, there will be drones which have both a C
100%.
rating and a UK rating.
Yes, and I think they will appear both. They will both appear on almost every drone probably sold across the EU. I would have thought. Just
until we start to get some divergence in technical areas that mean you can't do both, either with firmware.
Now that's going to be interesting. Unintended consequences is something we try to emphasize so much here on Geeksvana in terms of UK regulations, and a bit like when they extended the transitional and everyone back to that, but didn't realize it meant we wouldn't get C-label drones. And here I think there might be an unintended consequences in the future of the fact that it will be a UK1 label, and whether or not certain things get changed, who knows? But we're going to have to wait and see that. So far, even comparing the UK in the previous system and now this system, we have been less regulated than even our EASA EU partners, in my opinion, particularly the smaller aircraft. So in actual fact, as time has gone by, it's something that actually has benefited us. So yes, right.
Swings and roundabouts, because we haven't had the benefits of the C2. So from professional use point of view, we sort of lost out a little bit there, but hopefully we're catching up slowly.
We are. So at the moment, moving on to the next bit, at the moment there is actually no legislation that stipulates how close a drone can fly to uninvolved people in the A3 category. It's not a particularly well-known fact. I haven't put it in too many of our videos, etc. The CAA are actually now recommending that to amend regulation to clarify that UAS operating in the A3 subcategory must fly a minimum of 50 meters horizontally from uninvolved people to ensure the safety of those people. Also amend regulation to require UAS operating in the A3 subcategory to fly a minimum of 50 meters horizontally from individual buildings to ensure regulations are clear and proportionate for UAS operations away from congested areas but near buildings. Now, this is an interesting one to me because obviously a single building, what is that, Graham? Graham, I'm throwing it over to you. What is a single building?
I don't know. I'm waiting for the CAA to define it, because I hope it isn't a cowshed. I hope it isn't a derelict building. I hope it isn't a building which essentially isn't for habitation or work. And not only that, but it doesn't. 50 meters doesn't ensure safety of uninvolved people.
No, indeed.
It really doesn't. If a drone comes down from 400 feet traveling at any speed, it'll easily go over 50 meters horizontally. So you're not doing that. So where is the evidence that says we need to do this? How many people have been knocked out by drones in fields middle of nowhere?
It's an interesting one, because we went from the conurbation to the set of dwellings to, and they used to use things like dwellings, and it used to be a little bit more specific, to then buildings, and now buildings slipped into the AMC. And now that AMC is, according to this document, is something that's going to end up in legislation. So I think that in itself is one of the areas that I think we need to keep a close eye on. Now, that will obviously impact you if you're flying a heavier drone out and about without any kind of certification beyond the standard registration processes. And yeah, so it will affect you if you're flying under those circumstances, and again, not under Article 16 and those types of things. So
I can't help thinking some people in the CAA have never been more than 150 meters from a congested area and looked around. I suggest they do. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. It's an interesting one because it can't be left just to enforcement, could it? Really, it
No,
has to be a
no.
situation where it's the other way. It has to be clear at regulation, and that is actually we're told that that is exactly what they're trying to focus on. So we will give them the benefit of the doubt in terms of hopefully coming forward with an explanation on that one. Now it's going to become the actual legislation. So up next, and we have something that I don't think many will mind, a slight change to the names of the subcategories, as we were mentioning before. So the CAA state that they propose to amend regulation to rename the operational subcategories to over people, near people, and far from people, so that subcategory names are more intuitive and descriptive for UAS users. Now, to me, this seems fairly straightforward. Obviously, the overflight allowance for C1, UK1 will make it a true overflight subcategory. And I think it makes sense, doesn't it? It's kind of how we describe them. We say A1 over people, A2 near. It's exactly how everyone's been describing these things in many training videos and video and courses across the UK. So to me, it makes a lot of sense.
It does. I'm always wary of the word near because I know
Yeah.
that when people say you mustn't fly near emergency scenarios, you just get 50 pages of thread on a Facebook
Mm.
thread saying, well, what's near then?
Yeah, I
What
mean,
does near mean?
it's such a difficult thing to categorize in a few words because, of course, near people A2, that is also still a congested area, isn't it? So yeah, it's difficult. We've all got ideas of what it could be, but I think it's not going to be a change that's going to necessarily, unless I'm not spotting unintended
I
consequences.
don't think it's going to
It's
bother
it's
too
not going
many
to bother
people,
too
to be
many
fair.
people. So
No.
now the next bit is one that actually might sound a bit scary, but it isn't as bad as it sounds. So everybody, wait until it's explained. Uh,
Relax, relax.
in their second set of recommendations to government, the CAA propose, and this is on tile number 6, let's bring that one up, to amend regulations to require remote pilots of UAS weighing more than 100 grams or more to take the online free flyer ID test for UAS operations in the open category to ensure pilots of lightweight UAS have a foundational understanding of UAS regulations to improve the level of safety for all UAS users. Now, this is an interesting one, I think, from the point of view that this is not going to change in itself anything in terms of the regulations that you fly to with your sub 250-gram drone like this DJI Mini 3 Pro here. Nothing's changing. The way you can fly it in terms of restrictions, all that kind of thing. This changes nothing. All it means is that you need to take the flyer ID test. It has been our opinion on this channel for a long time that when they came up with the sub 250-gram level for the US and then EASA took it over, and there's always arguments of the origins and who started it first. It was many years ago. And when it was happening, sub 250 grams would have been a very much a toy drone. I mean, to be
Yeah.
fair, when the first Mini was leaked, I thought it was a toy drone. I didn't think it was a genuine one. I thought, first of all, the DJI Mini 1, the leaked pictures of that, I thought that was some kind of Hubsan toy or something when I first saw it. Because again, it's been established now by DJI especially, but that sub 250-gram camera drone market is something which is pretty incredible, and I
It's
don't think
huge as well. Yeah.
anybody in authority thought that would happen. So this is something that was almost coming before 2020 and those rules came in terms of what the authorities wanted. But obviously, it would require legislation changes and all the other things of leaving Brexit and leaving EASA and everything else like that. It just wasn't changed. The 100-gram thing perhaps does draw a bit more of a line in terms of these manufactured drones, but it doesn't help on the terms necessarily of whoops, although I do have a video on FPV coming up. So anybody that's watching in terms of FPV and wants to know how that will affect things like tiny whoops, etc., I do have some definitive information on that, which we will come back. But how do you feel about this, Graham, in terms of where this leads us?
I've said a number of times, I think the flyer ID should be a sort of minimum level. So I don't really have a problem. I think if you're old enough and have the understanding to fly a drone, you should be able to understand the rules behind it, the basic rules behind it.
Yes.
But the key thing to me is the training bit, the DMARAs, the information, the drone code, which it looks like they're going to rewrite.
It does.
And all I would ask is that they would rewrite it so it reflects their new rules. Because at the moment, this explains the fact that this document contains absolute proof that the drone code documentation is
Yeah.
wrong.
Well,
50 meters
and we will talk about that specifically in a couple of highlights time. But because in fact they are simplifying the paperwork and it's already started. And I agree, this is a vital opportunity for us to get it right in terms of the CAA and government, get it right in terms of everything being one true set of facts. So the drone code is the legislation. It isn't what we want you to do, what we wish you would do.
What we thought it was, or what we wished it was.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. This is the legislation. This is what you must do with AMC in there, because you can argue that AMC is growing as a superpower, as it were. So we've got a before and after table here, and this is in the document if anybody wants to see it in more detail. And we're obviously at the moment, a sub 250 gram toy would not require either. Below 250, not a toy with camera is where it starts to pick up. Of course, that starts to happen a lot sooner. So between 100 grams and 249 grams with camera, then yes, flyer ID and operator ID is required. Now, again, it's the definition of things which is going to be interesting, because of course we do have in there camera, and camera is one of those things under drone legislation and regulation has kind of evolved, hasn't it? Because we used to say, oh, complex camera capable of, and it's shortened and shortened and shortened to just camera. Now it will be interesting to see if the regulation actually does just state camera or not.
Yeah, because they use cameras for obstacle avoidance.
They do, exactly. Yes. It's a very, very good point. Yes, they are. They're all over these drones, aren't they, Frank?
All over them.
That's a very good point, sir. I knew there's a reason why you're here.
I'm glad there's one.
Indeed. We found it. Okay. Up next, and as I say, we are moving through these as highlights so that this becomes a video that you can watch relatively quickly, perhaps in a couple of goes, and we may even end up clipping out of it for some shorts as well. But up next, and a set of recommendations that are around, dare I say it, Graham, dare I say that word in 2 letters, remote ID. It should again be noted that these are the recommendations to the DFT from the CAA, and perhaps therefore things could change, but we'll have to wait and see on that point of view. Now this is interesting because we've actually heard slightly different proposals from within the system recently as well, so it is going to be interesting to see what actually happens in terms of the implementation. But they want to implement direct remote ID product and operational requirements from January 1st, 2026. This is obviously something which we were breaking to you very recently, the fact that it's already in law, and that it's coming. These requirements will come into force for UK 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 UAS, unless exempted under a specific category OA, which of course that won't be many of the people watching. Amend the regulation to extend the implementation of direct remote ID product and operational requirements from the 1st of January 2028. Further requirements will come in for those other bits here that you can see. So UKO, UAS, so the smaller ones, model aircraft, e.g. UK4 UAS, and privately built UAS weighing more than 100 grams or more with a camera. And then, of course, legacy UAS, i.e. those not within the scope of the UAS class marking, weighing 100 grams or more with a camera. So we have a situation here from the point of view that some parts are not going to be affected instantly. So UKO UAS weighing 100 grams or more with a camera, that'll be coming in 28. But obviously the ones that are UK 1, 2, 3, and 5 and 6 will come in straight away. And of course, privately built will also get to 2028 as well. I think that's going to be really from the point of view of ensuring that there are things like modules and that type of thing are on the marketplace, because the module does start to get mentioned in there. And again, although they are available for the US, they're not exactly affordable, are they, in terms of
No.
or particularly practical. There's a couple of them on the market which are pretty cool, and are very small, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, we do have a video coming specifically on this topic in detail, with an email that we received via one of the groups that we sit on, the IAG, from the DFT as well. So we'll keep much of the discussion on remote ID until then. But just know that direct remote ID is coming in from 2026. There is the desire to have hybrid remote ID as well, although I know that that is got a bit of a funding issue around it. So essentially, the first remote ID that's going to be coming in is very much the same as the American ones. So these drones already have that capability. It's going to be sending out that information to people locally via an app. In terms of promises or anything else like that, in terms of who gets what data, pilot locations, that type of thing, as I understand it, the technical capabilities, particularly with direct remote ID, are such that it's quite difficult to be able to encrypt that data when it's just a direct signal coming out of the drone, to be able to be viewed by some and not others, whereas hybrid, when it's network remote ID, it can. The fact that we're going to a hybrid system eventually, that's the preferred, is a problem from that point of view as well. So and of
And
course, no, please go on.
sorry, yeah,
No, please.
I wouldn't be doing justice to Simon if I didn't pick up on his point that the specific category operational authorization bit needs some clarification as well. That unless
Yeah,
exempted under a now
yeah.
whether that's
I think
whether
that's
that's all
within
right.
an OA. I don't think it's going to be a carte blanche that they
I
will be
can't. No,
exempted.
no.
It'll be more
It'll be
that if certain sale mark drones and that type of thing, and because of course the OA side of things is with SOAR is going to get far more complex
yeah,
in the nature of the beast, and some may have EC. And therefore, perhaps they'll say they don't need those. Basically,
yeah.
who
Don't need
knows?
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, of course, hybrid remote ID, which brings in network remote ID, that is the particularly horrible version that will track and record every flight and will log all of our flights, basically. We're told that the main issue there, in terms of that coming in sooner, is funding. It would require 20 million over 2 years, and there isn't the appetite for it yet
Nobody
in
wants to
government.
spend it.
It's one of those things where, of course, we're in, as we've heard from the Chancellor and others, that most departments are being asked to show how they can save money rather than
Yeah.
spend more, aren't they? Basically, so it's one
Um,
of those situations.
I mean, the silver lining would be if they can afford that, it probably means we haven't got such a cost of living crisis. So we.
Is that a silver? Yeah, okay. There is a hint of a silver lining there. Geo awareness will also be required on most drones from 2028, and that essentially is the onboard mapping to ensure the drone cannot operate in the restricted zones, etc. Think of it as a DJI map that's actually accurate. The technical implementation of that, I think, is going to be really interesting, isn't it? Because anything technical like that can sometimes be a really difficult thing to get right. So
As DJI have shown, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so as much as geo awareness and remote ID, I would also read between the lines a little bit from the point of view of what could happen, what they want to happen, and what might actually happen.
Mm.
Just be aware of that from that point of view. I think remote ID is going to be a little bit more of a roller coaster for the next couple of years than most things within this document, basically. Just very
And
quickly, go on.
from the commercial side, any geo awareness or geo fencing, they talk about geo fencing as well in the response. Geo fencing in particular has to work because you get commercial operators who are stuck, unable to fly for a client who is just stood there
Yeah,
tapping his fingers, wondering what the hell's going on. So, I
that's
can't
right.
fly.
That's right.
The
Yeah.
drone
So
won't unlock.
so and again, you do look at that from the point of view of technical requirements for a small country, essentially a
Yeah,
decent marketplace, but we're not the biggest marketplace.
no, we're
Um,
not Europe.
no, so it will be interesting in terms of how that goes, in terms of not negotiations with manufacturers, but discussions with them in terms of what's actually um, um, possible. Elsa Meghead is just putting his members thing in there for being a member for 57 months. Thank you, sir. Love you dearly. Hornby still selling train sets, right? Time to find a new hobby. It's actually I still think this overall is a deregulation the remote ID thing isn't good, but there we go. And thank you, Simon Stickland, for gifting a channel membership, and that was received by Space Gadget. And Space Gadget, you can go along and enjoy at the moment. We are currently, I can't actually get that one to come up. There you go, that's strange. But we are currently posting on our members section every day for 365 days. We're a few weeks into that now. And it's been an interesting journey. There's lots of behind the scenes stuff. There's lots of videos from around the studio, lots of different information about what we're doing, and even stuff about the production business as well, actually. So go and have a look at the feed. You'll see that there's a lot there, basically, which is all very exciting, isn't it? So yes, but remote ID is going to be a very bitter pill to swallow for the drone community as a whole. It is something which is coming in some form or other. It's going to be a fact of life. It isn't something that any kind of level of campaigning or anything else like that is going to be able to countermand, in my opinion. And I think that we do need to start essentially getting used to it and hoping that it isn't as as bad as it can be.
As bad as it could be. I think it's fair to say it's probably not the CAA driving, is it?
Yeah.
Others have more interest than the CAA.
I think it feels like quite a wide net to catch a small issue, but that small issue could be significant. But as I say, we will have specific discussions on that. Elsemaker trying to put me off by giving us super chats. Thank you, sir. I can actually love heart those now as well. There you go. You've got a little love heart. It says you might as well have my money instead of DJI now, Sean. Well, thank you. And Lady Leonana Drury has just become a member, a supporter plus. Thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate it. The channel members help fund this channel in such a direct way. Michaela, who's one of our moderators as well, also a member for 7 months, supporter plus, and MB Visuals, NE, good to see you, member for 4 months as well as a supporter plus. So I really appreciate it. We're having a lot of fun with them. Yeah, indeed. And Rob is saying, according to JB, the US just ignore RID. Now you've got a few complications in there, but you have to think about enforcement. You have to think about, why is remote ID coming in? What is it they're trying to stop? They're not trying to stop us flying our drones. They're not trying to stop us flying our drones FPV wise or camera drone wise for our hobby and enjoying ourselves, or people earning money from them, etc. That is not what they're trying to do. The issue that the wolf at the door, as security sees it, is something far more significant and far more potentially dangerous. And I think, as the US have found, the secret sauce is going to be in the enforcement of this. When RID came out in the US, finally after the delay there, we had an interview with the FAA that we put out on that day, where they were telling people, we're not hiding in the bushes to come out and jump out and find people with RID. It's education, education, education. And he said it about 3 more times, and then we'll think about the fact that you're not listening to this education and maybe take some action. So they're not looking to pull people over the coals. Now, if somebody is flying a football stadium and they're doing other things wrong, etc., great, it's all snowball for them. They will snowball those charges on, and they will find themselves in trouble for that, frankly. So it's going to be a long journey, and I don't think anybody can say what RID in the UK is going to be right now, but we'll move on from that topic. So the CAA then move on to provide a set of proposals to support the drone community, as they call it, through these changes, and there is some interesting points in here. These include amend regulations to allow most UAS users to continue operating their existing UAS in the same operational subcategories as today in most cases. Our approach will deliver further simplification of requirements whilst ensuring UAS users are not exposed to additional cost or inconvenience. Now, that first one there, Graham, that doesn't sound, that sounds like they're trying to give a bit whilst taking perhaps elsewhere.
I think that just sounds like a summary of what they've done further up.
Yeah,
they will let you.
It's yes, exactly. But I think the fact that they're saying here categorically within this document, we're going to amend the regulation to allow most UAS users to continue operating existing US in the same way, essentially what they're saying is they're going to let these things brick out rather than say, you cannot fly that legacy drone in X, Y, and Z way. And if you
Yes.
need a
Yeah.
module for your older drone, perhaps you might need that by 2028. But by 2028, will that drone be flying anymore?
You'll have changed your drone. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, isn't it? And the fact that they're looking to on that particular basis. Now, people know, I'm not a CAA yes man. I'm not their voice. I'm not anything else like that. I'm just as critical, if not more, than many other people. But to me, this is them trying to reach out and assure people that the money you've spent, etc., and the hobby isn't something that's going to suddenly disappear by some line in the sand.
I can't help thinking, Sean, that these 3 bullet points are an executive summary of the executive summary.
An executive summary of these, yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed, and that transpires with the next point being amend regulation to allow EU class marked UAS to operate in the open category in the same subcategories as their UK equivalents prior to the 2028. And to be fair, that's exactly what it does, isn't it? It's helping things along. It actually also does help them in terms of their own work, as it were, because obviously, how many years were we working out that by 2028?
Well, 2028, so 7 years from the launch of these EASA regulations, during which all of our friends and colleagues in Europe have been able to do all this stuff. In 7 years' time, we'll be able to do it all. We're way ahead of the curve here. We used to be at the forefront. Now we are running to catch up.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, and I in my own opinion, my own sort of summary of this kind of thing, of these highlights as well, is that I think together these will actually open up a lot more drone flights and allow actually more commercial drone operations without an authorization.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, absolutely.
And in a lot of cases, I see this deregulating drones we fly. However, and it is a big however, we need to get used to having those drone flights open to more scrutiny and potentially, depending on how they use the hybrid remote ID data, etc., simplified enforcement too. Now, it's important in terms of a network remote ID and logging flights. This is an important bit to point out as well in terms of enforcement. I don't see it as a simple mesh over the top of saying, okay, so they will know every flight that's happening. They'll be able to see that Sean flew his Air 3S 10 miles across London. Could you imagine? Now there's a video, and be able to just basically, tippy tappy send that across to the fine issuing department, and off it goes. That is not, as far as I can see, how this could actually. There would be a lot of hurdles to make that kind of thing work. Would that person end up getting a knock on the door and an investigation into them if they were doing those kind of things? Who knows? So I think part of with remote ID and some of the other factors here that could be quite concerning, the enforcement side of it is going to be the thing that we really do need to focus in on, because there's a lot of deregulation going on here, which I think is actually quite positive. And what I don't want to do is, we can't do anything to change it, frankly, and I don't want to become too sensational on the fact that I think remote ID is going to be extremely hard on us. Basically, it's going to be a bitter pill, but I'm not, as per the US experience of a lot of confidence that it was going to be a dramatic change, and it hasn't been. I do wonder in terms of that here in the UK as well. Obviously, we're a smaller country; it's easy for them to enforce, but it is not, in my opinion, going to be something that's just like a ticket issuing machine. How that works in terms of enforcement is so difficult, isn't it? As well, basically.
Yeah, and if it's not automated, we haven't still got an army of policemen to do this. So
Yes. Could you imagine the funding bill coming in? You needed for RID. We could times that by X, and then we might have the police that we need out on the streets, perhaps. But anyway, that's another whole level of potential
No,
issue
no.
there.
The concentration will be on the big events, the
Yeah,
and
which
the
is
people
again is actually
who are
what's been
clearly
talked about,
causing.
isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And idiots near airports who are being idiots on a regular basis.
Exactly, exactly. So there we go. Right. So that is the CAA CAP 3105. Is it 3105? Yes,
Yeah,
3105. You can
yeah.
go to caa.co.uk/cap and then put the number, and it should take you to it. Depending, although if it's the annual account, it might take you to the hidden version. But anyway, slash 3105, cap
You
3105.
know too much. Yeah.
And it will take you to this document if you want to have a read of the 33 pages yourself. To me, I think there's going to be a lot of interesting information coming out of this. And we are going to have videos coming out which will say, sub 250, how it's going to work for you, FPV, remote ID specific. There are some other videos coming out which will be recorded versions, so they're nice and short to give all the information as well. We will add chapters to this, although that won't help you because if you're watching this right now, you've come to the end of it.
Can I just pick up James
No.
James Emery's just okay. Regulating us out of the air. No, I'm going to be able to fly bigger drones than I'm flying now.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's a difficult one, but no,
Yeah,
but
I
I've got
don't
a
think they're
foot in both
regulating us out of
camps,
the
in
air
my opinion.
with these changes.
Mm,
Unless you are so opposed to RID that you don't,
yeah,
that you walk away
part of
from
my
it.
problem is that although camera drones are very, very important, and I'm predominantly a camera drone flyer, etc., there is a large part of the hobby. There's a large part of drones that are nothing to do with these things, and idiots flying them into football stadiums. And a lot of those people are also going to have very onerous restrictions on them, which are going to be more complicated and cost them more. And in terms of technical issues, and that I can see is going to put a lot of people off. So I can see part of it from a straight camera drone point of view. I think a lot of this is quite useful. And Rob R says, I think what people are worried about, RID potentially doxing operators. Yeah, I mean, if someone's flying within within VLOS, how hard is it to find that person if you do see a drone flying above? I think that there will become more ways to, and it's happening in the States at the moment as well, more ways to protect yourself against that. And I don't mean concealed carry here in the UK or anything else like that, but there will be tactics and ways of doing things that will protect you from the issue of doxing operators, etc., which I think will be something we'll focus heavily on the channel once we know exactly what's going on, basically. So. And Lindsay, thank you, Lindsay, for that very informative show. Thank you, sir. RID, I predict a data breach. That's a very, very British comment for the show tonight, isn't it? Frankly, thank you, Lindsay. One of our long-term watchers of the channel. I appreciate you coming in this evening. Excellent. Okay, sir, I have not allowed you to prepare a final word, but would you like to give us one?
Yeah, I will. It's not all about drones. Go and give your loved ones a hug.
Sean out.